Okay, you're back at orangequant.com. I'm Dennis Hudson, your host, and we're dealing with Hurricane the Coming Crash, Update 1, Part 2. Actually, this is Update 2. It's done in 2 parts, whatever. Okay, when we left off, we were talking about Bank of America and an article that I had shown you, or a piece of an article, and how last year the article was saying they could take $3.5 billion in toxic assets and claim it as income. It's magic. Jeez. So that means that 44% of their income would be counterfeit, basically. And it was this kind of bookkeeping that allowed the market to climb from April last year until the present day. It was the suspension of mark-to-market, and I guarantee you this is going to come back into focus, this whole mark-to-market issue, very soon. You mark my words. Now, I don't mean to pick on Bank of America. This is all the big banks. This is major corporations with toxic assets, so it's not just them. But if you think about it, you know, how much, if it was that much then and they're losing revenue and there are, as we have shown, and the toxic assets are increasing with mortgage defaults, auto loan defaults, credit card defaults, what percentage now in 2010 is counterfeit? And by extension on out into the coming years. You gotta think about this. Then you gotta remember the chart I showed you, the obvious chart where liabilities exceeding revenue flow, cash flow, means you're bankrupt. Well, at this point, I would think that the banks are technically insolvent. And this is a hot button issue. I would expect nationalization of some very large banks in the very near future. Now, the collapse of a large bank in and of itself will bring down the market, but it also provides vulture food for some very serious people, i.e. Guido the enforcer. So what do you think about that, Guido, huh? Vulture food? Yeah, I thought you would get it, Guido. Yeah, okay, buddy. All right, who is Guido? Who is Guido really? Now, the answer, part of it is going to surprise you, I think. A small part of Guido is you, the retailer. You are going to restore order to this market. You're going to, in your small way, by walking away from your stocks, getting out of the market, or shorting certain stocks. The bigger part, the greater part of Guido is also hedge funds, private equity funds, and certain other big investors, maybe even certain foreign governments. Surprise, surprise. But before we even get into that, let's talk about who Guido's targets are. Well, it's obviously banks and more banks, and even Fannie and Freddie. Guido's after them too. You see, Guido lost a lot of money and a lot of opportunity back with the suspension of the mark-to-market rule. Remember the little snippet I showed you where that guy from that private equity company was very ticked off? Carlyle Group? Okay. They thrive on buying up distressed companies and parting them out or turning them around and selling them off. The run-up prevented a lot of that, and the run-up was due to suspension of mark-to-market. Guido is definitely pissed off. And if you don't think there's something personal at a certain level of finance, something very ego-centered and angry, well, you're in for a surprise, but I think you know what this stuff is about. Now, along with Carlyle Group, which is huge, and I'm going to give you a way to look in on some of what they do, is Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, or KKR, and Blackstone Group. Blackstone Group, interestingly, and again, I want to refer you to what I published in May of 2007, forecasting the coming crash. Blackstone Group, I mentioned in there, was doing an IPO. And guess who was getting a big chunk of it? The Chinese. So you just watch the news on what outfits like Carlyle Group and KKR and Blackstone do, and it'll give you some clue as to what's coming. So the banks and a lot of other corporations are about to become vulture food. Now, they're not going to just sit there and be eaten all by themselves. They have to have targets. And we already pointed out that they could short the market, okay, and make money that way to keep the wolf away from the door, at least for a while. But who is vulnerable here? Who finally takes the brunt of all this abuse? Well, here you go. Where will they get the money? Who's most vulnerable? Well, first of all, you are. If you're long in the market, you're going to get hammered. And then there are the major pension funds, any 401k money that's out there, mutuals, and local governments have started making these risky bets in order to overcome their deficits. I mean, that's like states and cities and counties. They are all going to get creamed. If you're in a mutual fund, you know, you ought to read the prospectus very carefully, because a lot of mutuals have to stay 100% vested. In other words, they have to stay in the market, which means they get creamed. Now, even if they aren't in there 100%, once a run starts on the fund and people start pulling their money out, well, that's end game. And this will all come with no warning. You will just wake up one morning and the shorts and the hedge funds, shorts, like, you know, like myself. I mean, I play the market both ways. There's a ton of us who are waiting for this tipping point. And we are going to lay in with short bets. I mean, mine is petty compared to the big players. But a lot of us are going to weigh in, and there'll be no warning. And this market will collapse maybe 20% in a single day. 30% would not be out of the question. 40%. Why, when all these hedge funds, private equity funds, and everybody has lost so much money because of this run-up, why do you think they would give you any warning? No, folks, it's just going to hit just like that. The first leg down will come blam, just like that. By the way, Carlyle Group is 7.5% owned by Mubadala Development, which is owned by the government of Abu Dhabi. As well, the California Public Employees Retirement System owns a 5.5% stake in Carlyle Group. And as you know, California's been in a heck of a lot of financial trouble, and they were issuing IOUs recently to pay people. So they have to do some things to recover. That's a very big gorilla out there. And remember I was saying, why is that guy so ticked off from Carlyle Group? Well, here's a quote from him. No, not from him, from Conway, William Conway of Carlyle Group. I think this was back sometime in 2008, September, October, I think. The quote is, he said, "I expect the troubles to persist at least through 2009. Okay, now what that means is he was counting on a crash, but the suspension of mark-to-market prevented it and upset all his plans. That's basically, in my opinion, why he was so mad. Now, if you want to learn a little more about Carlyle Group, there is a URL for you to check out. And remember, there will be no warning. No warning. And Guido, thanks again for dropping by. I'm sure the folks really enjoyed having you stopping in. And we may talk to you again sometime in the near future. And a nice round of applause for Guido there. Thank you, Guido. Thank you, buddy.